G'day fishers, welcome to another episode of WA Fishing. This is going to be something a bit different. We're going to mix up the content, right? So we're going to do a cooking video today and I'm going to make you crayfish dumplings and show you at home. Now this is my own recipe, something that you won't find on the internet. It's certainly very customized to what I like. I do love dumplings myself. Xiaolong bao, those sort of juicy dumplings. And today we're going to make some with our Western Rock Lobster from West Australia. You can probably use other lobsters from around the world, but certainly it's one of our best assets here in WA. Western Rock Lobster, quite a sustainable seafood. Chinese love them, so do we locally, and you can easily catch yourself if you've got a boat, especially during Christmas time. So I like to do this recipe once or twice a year. Right now it's Chinese New Year and I'm going to do some. This may not be coming out during Chinese New Year, unfortunately, but this recipe is absolutely delicious. You just have to trust me. Now the ingredients I'm going to put up here somewhere over this location, and first we're going to make the skins and then we'll do the filling and then we'll put it together. This recipe is my own. As I mentioned, it is quite delicious. Your friends will absolutely love it, if not your family, and it's quite an easy recipe to make. I like making food that is really delicious and simple to make. Nothing too complex, nothing too fancy, but something that convinces your friends you're a really great cook at home. So without further ado, let's get into making this recipe. Okay, first thing is get yourself a scale. You'll need it particularly for the skins. We need to make sure the flour and water ratio is on point. I can't see that, so you may see me just leaning over. Alright, first ingredients. We need 400 grams of just plain flour. Now if you use a higher protein flour, it makes it more better, but I can't say I've noticed much of a difference. Almost there. Oh, a bit too much. That's close enough. Okay, 400 grams of plain flour. Next is 7 grams of salt. Tear this off again. 7 grams of salt. Oh, 8, 9. More salt, more flavour, as I say. Next is we need some boiling water. So I just boil mine in the microwave, but you can do it in the kettle or however you see fit. Next is we got to add 200. I know this is very specific, but 216 grams or thereabouts of water, and it depends on your flour, but that's a good starting point. 215 grams, something around there. So I like to keep my scales on 0, Ted, and then I just add water and just mix it in. It has to be boiling water, nothing less. Just mix it in until it's about 216. Oh crap, I'm a bit short. It's like making pasta, but not like making pasta. Now we'll add the rest of the water. Oh crap, too much. Too much water. Whoops. That's okay. It's a little bit of room for error, I hope. Right, now we've measured out all the ingredients, we don't need those scales anymore, so we'll get rid of them. Now, that pork will just initially mix it. Now we've got to use our hands. Now this is going to be hot, obviously with the boiling water, so approach with caution. Just bind it all together, and you'll see this dough start to come together in a second. Just keep massaging it. Once it gets to a certain point, just like pasta, pour it out on the bench, and then just massage it through until eventually it comes together. Now, because we added a little bit too much water, we might need to add a bit more flour. But we'll see how sticky it is once it all comes together. Just left, right, palm into it, just like you're making a bread or pasta for those Italians. Yeah, we'll need a bit more flour, starting to get sticky. But that's okay. If you missed the mark on the water, just add a bit more flour. If you don't add enough water, just take some flour out. It's very biggie. So just make sure you knead your dough. The longer, the better. Because what we want to do is get that gluten in the flour to start drawing all those, coming together. And those who are asking, I'm not a chef. I just enjoy home cooking and love my fishing, so you try and combine the two. That additional heat from the boiling water does make this a little bit easier than say if you're making pasta. If you're making pasta, you'd be doing this for a while. But you'll see it starts to smooth out and the gluten in the flour starts combining and binding, and it will start coming out smooth. This is going to be your wrapper for your dumpling. So it's a bit crackly still, hasn't really come together yet. Just keep doing this until eventually it smooths out. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, got it to a point where that's about as far as it can be bothered. You don't get stressed about it too much, but it should spring back a bit. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, it's starting to spring back, not too much. Alright, now we'll wrap it. So we'll wrap it in some saran wrap or glad wrap, whatever you want to call it, plastic wrap. Just wrap it to keep the moisture in. And then once it's wrapped, we'll put that aside and the gluten will develop a little bit further. And we'll start making the filling. Okay, water chestnuts. Just open a can of these. And just drain those out. Now you only need a couple of tablespoons. It's probably about half that can. Be enough. Just chop it up really finely. Now if you want to cheat, bring out the big guns, put a little mini food processor like this, and just chuck it in there. These things are brilliant if you haven't got one. Look at that, chopped minced. And that's what you want to do, is mince it right down. Finer the better. What it does is add a bit of juiciness to your filling. So we'll put the water chestnuts in first. I like to just do all the ingredients and then we'll add crayfish last. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter. Now you can mince your own, but I'm just going to cheat tonight because making dumplings is hard enough without adding too much complexity, without adding too much complexity to the dish. Just ginger, some garlic, add about a teaspoon of ginger. Rough enough is good enough. I like my garlic, so I'll add a little bit more. Add about a teaspoon or two. It's going to bring a bit of saltiness. Some white pepper, need a fair amount, so a couple of teaspoons. That, just give it a bit of mix as you go through, adding all the ingredients. Next, some Chinese wine, just need a couple of teaspoons of that. Adds a bit of flavour and depth to the 1, 2. It's good enough for the bush. Next we'll add some sesame seed oil. Just be careful, don't go over the top with this because it's quite strong, smoky sort of flavour. Just half a teaspoon, it's plenty. Next we'll add some oyster sauce. Now this is a tablespoon, so note this is a teaspoon, so I'm just using this as a sort of a reference point. Teaspoon's about 5 mils, so we'll add about 4 tablespoons. This adds a bit of saltiness and sweetness. Now we'll give that a little mix. Next we're going to add some pork lard, or lard as it's known, pork fat, or pork fat renderings I guess. Now you need a lot of this. This is going to add some juiciness to the crayfish. Crayfish doesn't have any sort of fat to it, and you need fat content to give you that juiciness in the dumpling itself. So we'll add about 3 tablespoons. Now if you're not sure, tablespoon's about 20 mils, so 60 mils. That's probably getting a bit close. Might just add a bit more. There's nothing wrong with a bit too much fat, unless you've got artery problems, but we won't talk about that. We're all about positivity here on WA Fishing. Now, it does help if that's warmed. I might chuck this in the microwave in a second once I've got all the ingredients, because that melts through. You only need to just chuck it in the microwave for maybe 10 seconds just to melt that fat down. Next is some spring onion. Do not add too much spring onion. I've experimented with this, and trust me, you do not want too much spring onion because it adds too much onion flavour to it. So probably if you got, these ones are quite thick, not sure if it comes well on camera, but if you got thin ones, use a whole one. If you got a thick one like this, I would only use half at best. Just going to take the outer coating off here. Chop it really finely. Just brings a bit of onion flavour to the dish. Just get it really nice and fine. Nice sharp knife helps. Add that to the mix. Okay, lastly, before we add the crayfish, is king of flavour.
Say MSG is king of flavour.
MSG. So add about a teaspoon of MSG. And if you're against eating MSG, then you're against eating most foods, because it's a natural thing in tomatoes, onions, garlic, all those sort of things that are your staple foundations. So you probably don't remove yourself from my channel, that's all I'll say. MSG is bloody brilliant in your cooking. But I'm just going to add this to the microwave for probably 10 or 20 seconds just to melt that lard that's in there. It does help if you do it before, but like I said, I only do this dish once a year, so I do forget little bits. But we'll add that in the microwave, melt it down. Okay, it's only been in there for 30 seconds and you can see that lard already starting to come together with the rest of the ingredients. Okay, last ingredient, and this is purely optional, is some Chinese cabbage, or wonbok. Now you don't really need the core. This just adds a bit of fibre to your dumplings if you want it, and volume. And like I said, this is purely optional. Don't need to go crazy with it. I mean, we're making crayfish dumplings after all, right? Not making cabbage dumplings. And then you can add that. And that just adds a bit of volume, especially if you're being a bit cheap on the crayfish. And as you go. Sorry, I'm a bit messy. It's the first cooking video. Now, what I suggest is 4 cray tails or 2 jumbos. I've got a jumbo here, which is going to be my centerpiece. So what my plan is here is we're going to separate the head, well, not separate the head and tail, get the meat out of the tail, and then boil this down, and then have a centerpiece to a dish which everybody will marvel at, and you've got dumplings around it, etc., etc. So for presentation, this is going to be for a Chinese New Year dinner with many friends, and you want to make it look good. Now this jumbo's got all its legs, you can see. Got 6 legs on one side, and we've got 6 on the other, which is a prime candidate for a great dish. So I'll start with the small ones because they're the easiest. And the way I get the meat out is simple. If you've watched my previous videos on how to clean crayfish and vac seal them, I'll put a link up at the top, but simply just cut down the middle with a sharp knife, split them open, and because they've been frozen, the actual meat itself comes away from the shell quite easily. If it's fresh crayfish, you will find it's harder to remove from the shell. And the tip is that you can just blanch it in some boiling water, and that actually causes the muscles, or I guess flesh, to contract away from the shell, and you can peel it out a lot quicker. Just blanch it in there for like 10-20 seconds, and then you do this and it'll be just as easy. Okay, plan is we're going to chop this up super fine, and then we're going to put it in with our mix over here. I don't know how many dumplings this makes, but it makes a lot. So probably reserve it for when you have a lot of friends around, but I like freezing them and then just pulling them out when I'm hungry. I don't know, throughout a few months afterwards. They do freeze quite well, as long as you've got them in a sealed container. And what we want to do is make basically minced crayfish. Should be a nice sloppy mush of protein. If you're going to do this with your knives, just make sure it's on something that's not hard, otherwise you're going to damage your edge. Just keep doing it until you're happy with it. It should become like mince meat. Okay, that looks pretty much good enough. We'll chuck it in there, and then we'll do this jumbo Now if you're cooking a jumbo, I like just boiling the head separate, and like I said, using it as presentation. These jumbos, it helps if you do the jumbos, it helps if you do the old cut away the flesh from the top. A bit harder to twist off than your normal crayfish. And just run your knife around the inside. This is a big male for those who don't know. And they usually have bigger front legs as well. Western Rock Lobster anyway. Barely any meat in the head. So I'm just going to chuck this in boiling water right now, and we'll cook this out probably about, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 minutes or so. And then yeah, this will be part of the presentation. To reserve the presentation, what I like to do is get some kitchen scissors, and I just go down the middle. And try and just get the meat out this way. You can break these out. Because it's been frozen, it is a lot easier. And there's the poo shoot. Now what we'll do is cook this shell out as well. It's going to be a lot of meat off this, I feel. Now we'll chop this up. Just the same as the other lot. Now if you've got jumbos this big, probably I would suggest maybe a little bit less. This is rather, I wouldn't say a massive jumbo, but it's probably bigger than what I normally serve. I'd say it's probably a 2 kilo model. This is the smaller one I've got in the freezer. Maybe next year we'll do a video on chasing jumbos. I didn't do the one this year, it wasn't my boat and it was just too hard. Let's clean up the bench. Okay, next we're going to do our dumplings. What you'll need is a pasta roller, whatever you want to call them. And we want to work our way down from 0 setting all the way down to setting 5. And we want to get these skins to that thickness. Also, what you want to get yourself is one of these dumpling presses. So what the brilliant thing about these dumpling presses is not only does it press your dumplings, but it gives you a size that you need to cut your pastry or dough out to. So really great ideas. Just buy them online. If not, you don't necessarily need these, you just need something that's about yay big, and I'll show you how to roll them with your hand. But these dumpling presses do make it a lot easier to do. Okay, what I like to do is just segment out the dough. Keep it wrapped because it does dry out pretty quickly. And you just attach this. Okay, this dough is much smoother now, comes together pretty well. Once you got it as flat as possible, start at number 0, give it a wind. It might be a bit crackly at first, but just fold it over again and keep doing this to work the gluten in. And then again, until you get a nice smooth dough. Sorry, this is not tied down to my bench. It's a bit awkward at this side of the bench, but you just do this a few times. And you'll see it comes out smoother each and every time. And then once it starts getting smoother, just now start moving it down. So we're going to go down to 1 now. And we'll move down to 2. We'll skip a few, go number 4. And then last, number 5 on your pasta roller. Okay, once you got your dough, now like I said, these are great, they have the cutter underneath. You just cut them out like so of the dough. And then you can reuse that for the next lot. Now you just prepare all the casings, if you like, separately. Use like a, you call it grease paper, baking paper, because it's that non-stick. So we'll do a bit more casings and then I'll show you how to fill. Now chuck your casing in this. And you've got your filling here. Now just chuck it in the middle. Don't overfill it. Get yourself a bit of water, just around the rim, like that, and then squish. And it should come together, not always perfect, like that. And that's your dumpling there. Now what I like to do is basically put it on grease-proof paper or baking paper like so and chuck it in the freezer, and that will be perfect frozen. You put it in the steamer and it will come together quite well. If you want to do it by hand, again, fill it up the middle. What you do is you basically just fold up one side of it like that, squish it down, and then you do the other side the same but the opposite. So see how you fold it like, I don't know, hope you can see that. And you get a nice shaped dumpling. So they're the two methods. Anyways, I'm going to get cracking on doing a lot of these because I've got to do about 100 or so. So yes, I'm going to be here for a while and I don't expect you to watch this being done. So I'm just going to fast track this and we'll get to the end of it and the presentation. Now the other things I forgot to say is spray this with just any sort of oil. This is just Woolworths canola oil because these things do stick to the press and it will make it come off a lot easier. Squish it in and you should see a slight bulge and that's it, and we got a perfect dumpling. So I like storing them in these just Chinese food containers. What I do is line the bottom with some baking paper and then I chuck in my dumplings so they're not touching, like so. And then you just layer it up with a bit of baking paper, like so. Just cut it. Just cut it the size, chuck them on top, and then chuck your next dumplings on top of that. Generally speaking, I fit maybe 9 to 12 dumplings depending on your size in a Chinese food container, and I'll chuck that in the freezer and they're good to go. So that's how I store them, and this is going to probably make about 100, and we will have a fantastic Chinese New Year. Delicious treats. So here's the finished product. When it comes to cooking these, I just put them in the steamer for about 7 minutes if they're fresh, or 15 minutes when they're frozen, and they come out perfect. Otherwise, what you can do is just chuck them like gyoza style in the frying pan, a bit of water, chuck a lid on top, and they'll steam through. Either way, they're delicious, so I hope you enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure you subscribe and like this video, it attracts more viewers, and comment what you want us to cook next, because I'm only just picking and choosing random dishes at the moment, but if there's any particular fish or seafood you would like us to go into a bit more detail, just make sure you put it in the comments. Anyways, have a great one, and we'll see you in the next episode of WA Fishing.